My name is Courtney Fingar, and I'm a contributing editor for Real Asset Media and the editor of our publication Real FDI, which combines the worlds of foreign direct investment and real assets. And I'm very much looking forward to this discussion. I will do it with one hand, as you can see, but all will be fine. It is on brand because, like a student, I tripped and fell in Leicester Square after a night out, and that's how I injured myself, which is very student behavior of me. But I'm really looking forward to this discussion, and as you will see, we have a really excellent slate of experts lined up to tell us where the opportunities, challenges in relation to this sector and where they're seeing the most traction. So if we can just go in a lineup, and I will ask each of you to tell us, who you are, what you do, and what perspective you'll be bringing. And I'll start there on the end with Heribert.
Thank you. So I'm from Erste Group Bank. We're Austrian-based, stock-listed bank, one of the largest in Central Eastern Europe. I'm heading the hotel team there. So and within that hotel team, we also cover student housing and serviced, let's call it serviced living of some time, resi for rent as well. And we have a clear geographic focus on Austria, Germany, and CE. So we won't cover any of the Western markets, but within these markets, student housing is an important asset class for us, and we are an active lender. We've been actively financing developments and existing student housing projects, especially in Poland, in Hungary, Austria. So looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Ernestas Kazbaras representing One Asset Management. It's an investment funds management company in Lithuania, and we are developing BSA portfolio in the C region. Currently we have around 1,000 beds operational in the Baltic states and around 2,000 beds in Poland, major academic cities. And we still have a strong pipeline for future development and aiming to develop around 4,000 to 5,000 beds portfolio to be operational until 2028.
Right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Agata Jurek-Zbrojska. I'm a head of real estate and construction department in CMS. CMS is a global law firm present in whole Europe and also covering other jurisdictions. We do have special forces and special group covering the living sector, including student housing, micro-living, etc. I'm personally also have the economical background, and I was involved in many years in number of research with Warsaw School of Economics on urban development and let's say, evolving the whole living sector. So I hope to bring this perspective as well. And also, of course, answer any concerns regarding the legal environment in Europe for living and student housing, micro-living, and so on.
Thank you. Patrick.
Yeah, hi, my name is Patrick. I work for HABYT. For those of you who doesn't know what we do, so we are basically an operator, and we're operating buildings in the residential and commercial space, which is not very common because normally operator, they specialize on residential or commercial, but we do everything. So the company was founded in 2016 in Berlin, and since then we have expanded all over the world. So nowadays we have around 15,000 units that we're operating from Berlin, Frankfurt, Munich, Milan. We are also in Portugal, Singapore, so many locations that we have. And as I said, the majority of our portfolio is in the residential segment, and there we're basically operating as co-living and studio apartments. And we are more focused on serviced apartments and hotels. And so we also recently launched a new hotel brand. So when you hear about HABYT, then basically it's everything from residential to commercial.
Great. And we just had a session before this one where we were looking at the European living sector as a whole. I want to ask Agata, since you're involved kind of in the broader market, do you see any different behavior, as it were, in the market for student housing as opposed to the European living sector as a whole?
In
I
my
mean, where would
opinion,
you
I think-
place it, I guess, in the market?
Yeah. So well, that's a very good question, and I think very difficult because we should probably talk about particular cities rather even than particular countries when we are talking about the student housing. But in general, what I see is the growing interests and changing the, let's say, student housing as a part of real estate market from being a niche and very alternative to the asset class per se. So we see a lot of investors who are really engaged in building the full platforms based on student housing. And of course, micro and co-livings are still niches and alternatives. That will be my answer to
Right.
that.
So is it a little false to try to lump together student housing, micro living, and co-living? Should we have 3 different panels on these topics?
I think that these are very combined, and maybe this. Well, we can of course talk for probably hours about each and every segment, as you said, but they are depending on each others. Yes, they are influencing each others also from economic perspectives. Yes, and developing, for example, the developing student housing. Really influence the pricing also on the micro living, co-living, and PRS sector. So, in fact, when you look, for example, from the perspective of the city or the city development, developing the student housing can influence positively the rental levels. Yes, because instead of flow of the students, which is really massive in some cities, to these sectors of micro and co-living, they have the ability to live in student housing, yes, and then you have like natural economical control over this sector.
Great. Go ahead, please.
So the way I see it is like normally we're trying to define these sectors saying like, oh, this is student living, this is micro living, etc. The way we see it is in the end it doesn't matter what's the name for the business that you're operating. It's rather you need to think of like who is using the apartment, the studio, whatsoever. Because for example, for us, I mean, we rather see it as we renting out to young professionals, and a young professional can be a student, but can also be like, I don't know, a junior consultant. And they don't care if you say like, oh, it's a student housing, or if it's like just an apartment. They care about like what's the price, what are the amenities, etc. So I know like we're always trying as real estate people try to define the things and then you like give it a tag saying, oh, you know, we invest in student housing. But in the end, from a customer perspective, it doesn't matter. It's really like, what do you get for your money?
Great.
I think that these asset classes are linked, but it's a little bit servicing to different users, right? So if you talk about PBSA, so you need to design the right product for the students because they are like not able to pay the same amount of money than was the young professional could do it. So it should be really affordable. Most probably you should focus as well on like community building. So I think there are differences, but of course in general I think it's one big asset class. But you could be specific and focusing on like very sub niche, right, of this asset class. So we do PBSA. So the main customers of ours is like real students. So I think they have like the lowest purchasing power compared to young professionals or young families who could live in these micro apartments. And you need to create the product, amenities, as you said, services, operations, and things like that. And at least in C region, I think this asset class started like a private purposely built accommodation started from the idea that you need to service the international students. And I think last few years was a huge expansion in all major academic cities in C region. And I think now it's like if you look at these international students, demand supply gap, I think is more or less okay. It's more or less balanced. But there is huge undersupply for PBSA schemes to be created for the local students, right? And then for the local students, you need to create affordable product and create communities that they would feel comfortable there.
Great. And while you've still got the mic, from an investor perspective, where do you see the big opportunities? Agata made a point that depends a lot on geography, the place, the segment as well. where do you see the hottest prospects right now?
So I represent C region, so I think in C region the biggest prospect is to focus on the affordable products, because if you look at the local portion of mobile students, it's really huge, and they are really underserviced. Most of them, they live, in the flats, sharing with their friends, so there is huge need of that. But if you would focus just, on international students who typically they can afford a little bit higher price to pay. So that market is not that big, right? And it's easy to create a supply for them.
Great, thank you. And I'll ask Heribert, because you'll have a kind of view on CEE as well. Where excites you in that region?
I mentioned it before. I think this is our main focus, where we see still, if you look at the student housing especially, which is our main focus in Poland, especially Hungary, Czechia, Austria, the bed provision rate of PBSA, so purpose-built student housing, is very low compared to some of the established markets, UK, Germany or France. So there's still quite a lot of potential. If you look at the performance, the occupancy of the operating student housings in those markets, they run at 95 to 100% occupancy. We've seen really strong increase on the prices and the rates as well in those markets, especially year on year. So these all still have a very attractive investment and financing case, I think, those markets, and that's where we're also focusing on financing. And a lot of these products are oftentimes they are developed by local developers who start with one or two, and then it's absorbed and sold to one of the bigger platforms. That's what we see. So still, I think, attractive for local developers, but also for international investors growing their platform now in this space.
Great, thank you. And Patrick, you mentioned some of the places where you're already active. Where do you see the future growth? Where are you eyeing for expansion opportunities?
That's a really good question. I would say for us as a company, we are still in a hyper growth phase. And thinking about the state of the company, for us it's important to cover the majority of the clients that we want to cover. So that basically means we're really focused on the locations where you get your tenants, your clients, which means in the end, speaking about Germany, for example, we're just focused on the top tier cities in Germany. Why? Because everyone wants to move to Berlin, Frankfurt, Munich, because that's the place where you get the jobs. So, for example, yesterday somebody asked me, it's hey, you're interested in a building in Aachen, somewhere in North Rhine-Westphalia, for those of you who are not from Germany. It's I think it could make sense to go there, but for us, as we want to still have a high growth phase in the company, we're really focusing on where do we get the majority of our clients, and that's basically just the top tier cities. And even in the cities, we're just focused on the A and B locations and not even C, because sometimes, especially young people, young professional students, they always want to be in the middle of the city center, because that's where you have the nice restaurants, cafes, etc. So for us, it's really about location is key.
Right, so where that kind of young talent is going, essentially.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you. And Agata, I want to reflect back a little bit. How have you seen this particular segment evolve maybe since last Expo Real? What were people talking about then as opposed to something new now?
I think that in these sectors maybe it's difficult to compare year to year basis, because this required a bit, let's say, more to really evolve. And I think that we are still in the stage of kind of evolving this sector. But definitely I see that there is established interests in developing of student housing platforms and new investments in micro and co-living. In particular in, let's say, Poland, Warsaw, where I'm maybe the most focused on at the moment. We really saw the new developments, new investors coming to Warsaw and Krakow, which are the biggest designation, and with the biggest increase of inflow of the international students, because by every investor, according to, let's say, my knowledge, this is one of the important factor. And in Poland, we have more than 120,000 international students, as far as I know, that the last year increased. So that's really, really huge number. So I really see the increase, and I believe that this becomes the stable investment product currently.
Great. Would you like to add to that, Ernest?
Yeah, so I think, it's my third or fourth Expo Reel. So a few years ago, I think everyone was like focusing in terms of PBSA, UK, Germany. I think last year, I think everyone started looking like Spain, Italy. And recently, more and more I hear about like C region, that, Poland, for example, is a new market where everyone should focus. And I think, we're trying to position ourselves like in very good position to prepare the right product, the right assets for these guys, when they will decide to come.
So it's clear to see maybe where some of the investment opportunities are, but let's talk about where that investment, in particular international capital, is coming from. In the European living sector as a whole, there's growing interest. It is seen as stable, as Agata mentioned, so there's growing interest and inflows of capital from the US, from Asia, from the Middle East. Ernestas, is that something you see? Where do you see the sort of investor interest coming from? Where is it growing?
So our fund is like, from which we invest, is purely opportunistic. So we are taking, the licensing risk. We're buying the plots, we design, we develop, we hold, and then, we try to create a big enough scheme, for these bigger players to come. So currently, I think, at least in C region, I see only opportunistic capital being involved, like the guys who are able to take higher risk, and they can develop and prepare portfolios, because there is not so many of the assets which you can, try to transact. In recent years, I think we started feeling, an interest from, value-add investors from, Western European countries looking at the C region. So typically, these guys, they can come and try to buy, stabilized portfolios, but they still believe in the growth of France. They still believe that there should be compression in yields. So these guys, I think, they're already looking and analyzing and looking for opportunities, but I haven't seen yet bigger transactions. But I think this is about to happen. And from the C region, your dream is that some core capital guys will come later on. But I think the market needs much more maturity. The market needs much more transactions, liquidity, and it will take some time for them to come. So I would say right now it's like local or regional opportunistic capital, and some value-add capital from Western European countries are already looking at the region.
Great, thank you. And Heribert, I'd like, if you want to add anything on the type of capital that you see, but also I'd love for you to tell us how have things evolved on the financing side over the past year.
Mentioning, I think a lot of these products are initiated into the markets now by local players, then eventually acquired by some of the growing platforms. You have a few really big players in the student housing sector. I mean, most of the money is still coming from the US, and it's mostly opportunistic. I think some recent transaction this year and last year, you saw that there's also some institutional funds inflow now, also in the CE region. Now the UK, the Western markets, they're much more institutionalized in this segment already. On the funding side, we have been an active lender. We did finance last couple of years. We're still financing, so there has not been a big change. Only a few new projects have come to the market in the last 12 months, I would say. But this is really related to the overall slower development activities we saw throughout the real estate sector.
Great, thank you. And I want to talk a little bit about the rental situation. Throw this first to Patrick, and others may want to weigh in. Do you think the growth in rents is sustainable? What's your projection?
Yes.
And is that because simply of supply and demand mismatch?
So, I mean, right now we are in a shortage of living spaces, which is also one of the main reasons why there's so much interest in service apartments, co-living, micro apartments.
Right.
Because I mean, just try to find an apartment in Berlin, Munich, Frankfurt. Like, people will laugh at you. It's like, oh, you want to move to Munich? Good luck, find an apartment. And that's basically the thing. And, you know, like, for example, if students, if they want to study, let's make the example. Let's say they, you know, like, they want to study in Munich and they're coming from Poland or wherever. Like, the first question that you need to answer yourself is like, where do I live? And, you know, like, especially as a foreigner, you have very little chances to go to like a national landlord saying, you know, I'm a student, I want to get the apartment, which costs like 2,500 K. People say like, you know, I have better opportunities and I can just take someone who has been, I don't know, working at BMW and earns like 10 times the salary that you're getting. And that's basically why these student living, micro living is getting so important, because there are people that don't have the money to afford an apartment that costs like 2,500. You know, like, and they just want to find a solution where they can stay for, let's say, 6 months, 12 months maximum. And that's basically a big opportunity in every city, because the shortage you have everywhere. And that's the reason why you need to have, I mean, you were speaking about like affordable living, but normal apartments for students are not affordable at all. They're rather trying to find a solution where they can say like, you know, I want to live there for 6 months. I don't need to bring anything. I can just come with my clothes and live there for, let's say, 500, 600, 700 euros. And that's why there is like such a big demand, and it will even increase in the future.
Right. And do we all agree on this point? Any skeptics there?
I think, you know, I don't want to lie, but we checked that in CE at least last 5 years, the compounded average growth of rent was around 9% in PBSA. So it's quite a big number. But I don't think it will last like this for upcoming years. I think the prices will start stabilizing because, you know, this demand and supply should start be a little bit balanced. It's a bit different most probably in Western Europe. I think, you know, we don't have that huge of, you know, shortage or imbalances as in like major cities like Berlin.
You're lucky then.
So I think that, you know, of course there will be a push for a price increase, but there is still a limit for affordability because, you know, it becomes quite heavy, you know, for students in CE to pay, I don't know, 700-800 euros per month. So as I said, we see a big undersupply for the locals, and I think the locals, they will never be able to pay these amounts in upcoming future. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to offer them, you know, affordable living, which means that the land costs as it costs, the construction costs as it costs, but what you can do, you can maybe, you know, make more double rooms, make more, you know, shared rooms where you can, you know, make the price a little bit cheaper for student. So I think at least in CE, this is now the main trend. Of course, the prices will increase, but I feel that, you know, there is a psychological limit as well how much it could go.
Right.
At least
So there is
future.
a ceiling, as it were.
Yeah.
Did you want to add?
I agree.
Sorry.
Sorry, thank you. Well, I agree on the most what was said, but I think that like also in CE, like everywhere, we have this huge shortage of units, yes, in the living sector and the same in the student housing sector. And of course, the affordability is the other question, which I think is also everywhere. Maybe the level of the rents will be different in CE than in Berlin, Munich, and so on, Amsterdam, yeah. But we have exactly, like from economic perspective, the same problem, yes? So the rents will grow because also the investment costs are growing. The land is very expensive, the development costs are still growing. And here, the kind of issue, I think, also everywhere is the involvement of the cities and really also trying to open, let's say, at least part of the land which may be used for such purposes. That's the first thing. And the other, the planning and, let's say, development processes. Because it seems that in almost, again, every European country and city, we do have a problem with the master planning and with the length processing of obtaining relevant permits. No matter what it is, but for also living sector, that's particularly important. Like in Poland, for student housing accommodation and maybe micro-living, it is kind of opportunity because you can develop this type of living schemes on the service units, so provided according to the zoning plan for services use. And for pure residential, you cannot do it. So you have a bit more opportunities. So from that perspective, this can be easier, yes. But from the investor perspective, I think we still will see in the coming years the growing rental level. Yes, and that's what I wanted to add.
Which is on the other side also the flip side, because the more money that flows into that industry, of course, the higher the rents will be. And like also for us as an operator, like we make the money between what we pay to the landlord and what we get from our tenants. And the more we need to pay, of course, also the more we need to ask from our tenants. But in the end, most of the time, for example, especially students, they have a fixed budget, and they cannot go over, let's say, their budget. And then you see this situation where the operator basically says, I understand that the construction cost is increasing and maybe even more than like what you can basically afford. But I think that's the limiting factor on where the industry can basically go.
Heribert, you'd wanted to add something, I believe.
Yeah, maybe so now you've elaborated already on this, but it's very closely the demand for student housing and the rates you can charge in student housing, the same for service living products, is very much determined by the local residential market. So really have to look market by market. It's very much interlinked, and in many major cities we have just a massive shortage of, as you already said, like in Germany, but also we see in Austria, especially for students, if you're looking for short-term rental, it's very difficult to find anything because you have longer-term contracts, you have a lot of additional costs and so on. So this is kind of driving demand and also demands the rates in those products. So this is very much linked, and then cannot define it as an absolute level. I think it's really relative to the local price levels in the residential market and other opportunities. And one last comment on the total budget. For students, I think this is also what's driving students, why a lot of students come to Poland, for example, or Hungary. The overall cost of living are still more cheaper, so they can spend maybe more on the housing. They want to have a good student accommodation because the other costs are going out, and we're seeing the day-to-day living costs are cheaper there for Western students.
Yep. I want to talk a little bit about the tenant expectations. So we talked about their budgets, as it were. But Patrick, what are the amenities that have to be provided? What are the tenants looking for? And has that changed at all over the past few years?
I would say it all comes down to the budget that each one has. Because, let's be honest, there are some students which might have not the same budget as others have. And then they're rather looking for like a low budget accommodations. And basically the expectation is, let's say, very little amenities that you can offer. But for example, for the, let's say, brand new buildings, new developments, where you need to ask for a lot of money to make the margin at the end as an operator, of course you need to provide a lot of amenities. And I would say that is also one of the key factors to make a project work as an operator. To say, like, let's say in the end you're charging, let's say, €1,000 for a room, then it's not just the room. It's really like you want to give, let's say, an experience to the tenants, and you need to provide things that like the students or the young professional would. How do you say? Like, for example, a gym. Yeah, so. Let's say every student is using a gym, but then instead of like going to a gym and taking a new subscription, you just said like, look, this is the nice building, you get your room, and by the way, there's a nice gym in the basement that you can use. So, in a nutshell, the more you ask in the end for the rent, the more amenities you need to provide, which has a benefit for the student or for the tenant.
Right. And one slightly thorny issue in Europe, as in many other places, that's sort of underpinning the supply and demand problems is migration in European cities. So there's a lot of population influx, and Poland, Warsaw has seen this, in other cities in Poland from Ukrainian population coming in. But there are, I guess, social issues related to the feeling that there's not enough housing for everyone. But do you see this kind of migration patterns and demographic changes as an opportunity in this sector? Or does it create additional pressure? Who wants to take this hot potato?
I think, when this started, so we felt it a lot. I think right now it really calmed down. Some of the people, they, came back, and I don't see it now as like big problem. But of course, in Poland, major academical cities, like part of Ukrainian students is quite significant. But right now we don't see, a huge pressure. And being honest, I think Ukrainian students, they were not the ones who are able to pay, the highest price.
Yeah.
So maybe, as I said, like at the beginning, during this asset class was mainly dedicated to pretty much to service international student needs from Western European countries. So for typical Ukrainian student, it was quite high price. But what was happening is that they were renting flats, sharing together, pushing out, some of the students, of the flats or residential market, and then some of more local Polish students were coming to, let's say, our properties. And I think we see now around 50% of tenants being locals. I mean, Polish origin.
Okay. Sorry,
I
Agata,
would
address the
like to
Polish
add-
issue and then we'll come to
Yeah, I would like to add the comment about the standard. Well, in Poland I was visiting a number of students' accommodations which were developed in the last couple of years in Poland and Krakow, and I was amazed. Yeah, comparing to the times when I was studying, that's like really the heaven. So they are really wonderful. Probably because most of them were really focusing on international students at that stage. And I think that in CE this will change and this will shift. I see now some of investors who are thinking, okay, so now we need to find the other scale. So we have very good, very expensive, wonderful with gym or maybe even swimming pool or sauna or jacuzzi student housing. And we do have like the students' accommodation provided by the universities, which is really poor, or the students are living in the shared flats. And there is a really lack, and I believe that it's in mainly the whole CE, which are the biggest cities in CE. We are missing this like middle class
Right.
of students' accommodation, which are, let's say, good standard, maybe shared rooms, like not a single rooms, with relevant, like smaller rooms, relevantly well located or well connected, but maybe not in CBD, but in kind of good locations. And that's what I see the niche it's now filling in. There are investors like you and some others who are really thinking from that direction. And this is the real future. And the standards is changing because the people have more money. Like in comparing to 20 years back in CE. So that's I think really important pattern, yeah.
Thank you, Patrick.
I think two factors that is normally overseen is first of all the overall let's say accessibility for international students. What do I mean is, let's say, I don't know, you're coming to Germany. The first questions that you have is, I don't speak German. How can I make the living in a city? Do I need to speak German, or am I fully okay to speak English? And I try to go to Berlin. I mean, I'm a German, and whenever I go to a restaurant in Berlin, I order my food in English because it's like so normal that you just order things in English. And for international people, I think that's a very important thing that they can make their living in a city where they can just speak the language and they have no barriers. And that's, for example, in Germany, why like so many people are coming to Berlin, because it's basically a international city. It's a metropolitan area. That's one thing. And on the other thing is something that I experience quite often if I speak to our tenants, is the political situation in the country. And I think we have seen that in Germany the last couple of months and maybe years. If you speak to international people, they're, let's say, concerned and scared about like what's going on. Do we see more right-winged politicians coming to getting more power? And that's something that really scares people because they're living in a country where they might not be able to live there in the future anymore. And that's one of the points, I think, Heribert, you also raised that point, is how does the environment change in the future in the country, and do I still want to live there? And I think that's something that we have also experienced in the last couple of months, that more international people, they really think of like, is it a good and safe place to live now?
Very good point. And from that perspective, Poland is ranked as the third country in the row after Finland and Romania when the statistics of like people saying that they feel secure and safe and life is really well. So
Yeah.
I didn't know that this is so maybe important for the students. I'm
Yeah.
not that deep in that market, but in general, that's very important,
Yeah.
This sector.
Yeah, I think Poland is very safe country for students. I think we don't have these problems, but let's say this year I don't know how much we are affected as PBSA investors, but I've heard that there were like around 40% of visas rejected in Poland.
Okay.
I don't know how many of them were students, but new government came in. They a little bit changing the immigration policy, and we had quite a big portion of students, let's say, seeing in our properties from non-EU countries, and I think there will be an effect as well on that. But
sure.
of course, I fully agree that Poland is one of the safest countries to live.
I have a final question or two to wrap up, but I want to give our audience a chance. If you have a question or a comment, please just raise your hand. Yes, there. Sorry, we may need to grab a mic from one of our speakers if we're a bit short. Thank you.
What are the average construction costs for a student living and the yield that is expected by the investors in average?
So pretty much all-in cost in C region, including land, financing, working capital you need to have to start operations. I would say it's depends on the location, but could be, if you go for very economy scale product, could be, 76,000 euros per room, and it could go up to even above 100K. Depends really on the product, but and location. And then, I think in our cases, if we see that we can have like an entry yield on stabilized NOI, counting on stabilized NOI, I think, from 7.5, we treat it as quite okay business case.
Thank you. Anyone else have insight on the construction cost issue? Nope, we've covered it. Thank you for that question. Any other questions? No. Okay, just to round out our discussion, I'd just like to ask each of you your kind of final key takeaways and what's your outlook for the next year. Start with Patrick.
I wasn't prepared for that question.
I know, just to mix it up a bit.
No, I mean, of course, I'm more focused on the German, Austrian, and Netherlands market. I would say I'm optimistic on the industry itself. However, as I indicated, there is this political situation happening, let's put it that way, and also regulations. I mean, coming from Berlin, I know a lot about regulations. And that is something that closely need to be monitored, especially given the situation that, especially in Germany, there might be a lot of regulations coming up, and that might be a limiting factor for the future. But on the demand side, definitely there will be demand.
Keep going up.
Yeah.
Agata?
I think that the takeaway for this sector, it's really encouraging everybody to deeply observe the new markets and searching for new opportunities, because there are such, in particular in the sector, in the cities and sectors which are, let's say, developing still, like the cities. And be open for discussing on new new countries.
So as I said, pretty much we are big believers in this asset class and in the region, I mean C region, and we'll still focus, upcoming few years on, creating decent portfolios and decent schemes in the major academic cities in C region. But I think our focus will shift a little bit more to affordable living, and we'll try, to catch the local demand, because as I said, the international students, the numbers are growing, but the supply as well is growing quite fastly. And I think if you want to be successful in this asset class, so you need to focus on affordability and community creation.
Thanks. Heribert?
Very positive growth aspects for this asset class, and if you're looking for a financing, get in touch. Thank you.
That's a good note. We will end there. Well said. Thank you very much for those who've joined us here in person, and of course the audience watching us online.